Pranam everyone, this is Mansi. On this very auspicious day of Buddha Purnima 2020, it is an absolute joy, honor, a privilege to introduce Quanto Shivo. Shivo is the founder of Quanto Life, and he's the man who's introduced me and so many hundreds of us to Deva vibrational fields, to experiencing Deva magic in our lives, to experience their miracles, and to be very humbly in partnership with them to create something beautiful in the world. He has identified, awakened, and given us opportunities to share our unique potential. It is amazing and astonishing how he's able to do that. He is the crystal clear voice of consciousness. I have seen so many people, including me, come to him with a very complicated situation. It will be complex, entangled, enmeshed, and you bring this to him, and somehow he will pick up this one thread from it. And once he's picked up that thread, the whole situation will unravel. Somehow he's picked up the crux of the matter. And then the whole thing will start entangling and become so simple and easy to understand that the next step that we take will become clear. He's literally giving us the darshan of the reality of the whole situation. And once you have that darshan, the marg ahead is clear. And this is how he lives his own life. People who have known him and have been with him, they have seen this. If it's a good situation, then he knows how to extract the rasa, the soma from the situation. And the situation will become way more beautiful than you can imagine. There will be beauty that you haven't even noticed. And once he shows it to you, it's so obvious. And you start experiencing that beauty too. If the situation is very complex, or you're facing a crisis and he's there, somehow this crisis will start becoming an opportunity for something. You will start discovering yourself in a way you have never discovered before. Somehow you will find an opportunity, and sometimes even a new creation happens. This has happened, this is very astonishing, but this has happened so many times. And this is the presence of a master. This is his skills of observation. And this is what I hope that we learn today in this talk. We hope to imbibe this secret. Religion is complex. The history of religion is complex. What we are facing right now with this huge pandemic is complex. So, I request Shivo to share how we should observe this pandemic, how we should observe the situation and the reality we are in, and how do we live it in the best possible way. On Buddha Purnima, I also have a question that how would Buddha live this? What would be Buddha's advice to us? And also I request Shivo to teach us how to experience this Buddha field today, this living vibrational field of Buddha. The stage is all yours, Shiva.
And that insight is about reality versus belief. The biggest block to discover your vision is your belief. The crux of discovering your vision is to first observe the reality. And in fact, that is what Buddha brought to the consciousness to the religious consciousness of the world, the observation of reality. The first instance of observation of reality happened long back, and that was the time of Sati Yuga, the time where the Upanishads were written. Upanishads were the first record Yes, Mansi, you can send. No, I am not sure how to. Yeah, if you can send, is it possible to send questions on WhatsApp?
Yes, it is possible. So can I just send
Yeah,
it to you on your WhatsApp?
yeah, send on the Upper Dress group. Yeah.
On which? On the upper? Okay, sure. Thank you.
So the Upanishads were the first statement of reality. And what was the reality in Upanishads? What is the source of the whole world? What is the source of reality? That was discussed in Upanishads. And it says that there is an omnipresent cosmic consciousness, and sometimes we call it God. And that God was told as a source of reality, and it was not a concept, it was not a belief, it was a real experience of sages, the Upanishads sages. They had the first-hand experience of the reality of the consciousness. And that's what the seeding of Hindu Dharma was. There was no belief, it was a pure experience of sages. Western religions, they almost are based on a belief that there is God. But Indian sages, the Hindu sages, they had the real experience of it. So that was a time of Sati Yuga, the time of the reality of the God, and the world came to know that. And in fact, the almost similar concepts today are coming in the field of quantum sciences. A lot of quantum science scientists, the greatest of the scientists, uh, they were known to be the lovers of Upanishads. Uh, One of the founding fathers of quantum science, Niels Bohr, used to say that I go to Upanishads to ask questions. And in fact, the asking questions was the crux of Upanishads. The whole dialogue in the form of the whole of the content of Upanishads is in the form of questions and answers. I'm just going through the questions here. So again, we'll follow the same format of Upanishads here. There is a question and I'm going to respond to that. But I will also keep speaking what I need to speak. And there are already some very beautiful questions. And I'll keep taking it. But let me just give you the background, which will explain that what is the role of Hinduism today and what is the role of Buddhism today. And I always keep saying this, that if you combine the Hinduism and Buddhism, it almost becomes a complete religion. I will not say it is a complete religion, but it almost becomes a complete religion. But Hinduism in itself is incomplete, Buddhism in itself is incomplete. And that is what I'm going to talk about, that how both together becomes complete. I will also talk about that why there have been immense conflict between Hinduism and Buddhism. And I've almost always say this. This is one of the deepest insight, in fact, I discovered in my life, that the reason India suffered huge blows, the reason it was invaded, the reason it had to face the colonial slavery, or before that the Islamic invasion, is because of the conflict between Hinduism and Buddhism. And today, when there is a lot of talk about India being the world guide, it is very, very essential that Hinduism and Buddhism today are integrated. And unless it is integrated, we cannot even think that we can become Vishwagurus or whatever. So I was giving you the background of what was the foundation of Upanishads, the deepest Hindu thinking. It came in Satyuga. It was about the God as the source of the world. That was the deepest insight of Upanishads. In modern terms, quantum scientists call it downward causation. So there are two groups in quantum scientists. There are two groups. The minority is very much believe in the Hinduism concept that first there was God and the world got created. So first there was consciousness. From consciousness, God came. There is another group which is in majority today, which says, no, first there is spiritual. Sorry? Hello? Yeah, so the bigger group of quantum scientists say that first there is world, and then there are processes which create consciousness. So like we are humans, so our body grows, our mind grows, and consciousness is somehow the essence of everything, and everything turns into consciousness. So the consciousness comes in the end. And this is also the Buddhist view. Hindu view is first there is consciousness, then the world comes. So this is the basic conflict today. And what I discovered, the deep insight I had, that even though the world came from God, there was first consciousness, then the world was created, but at the same time, world also creates its own consciousness, and that's how the God keep expanding. That's how the consciousness keep expanding. One of the greatest discovery of the science, or I would say the greatest ever discovery of the science, was that cosmos is expanding. And it is not just expanding, but it is also accelerating. And this discovery happened very recently, some 20 years back. And the discovery was that consciousness, the whole cosmos is not just expanding, but it is also accelerating. Hindus called God, the name Hindus gave to God is very, very meaningful. And it is probably the best name for God you can ever give. They called it Brahma. Right? We call God Brahma. And what is the meaning of Brahma? Brahma means the ever expanding one, which keep expanding all the time. So this was a name we gave to God very, very long back in Upanishads. This name of the God came from Upanishads. And now the science is saying the same thing. 20 years back, it discovered that the whole world is expanding and accelerating. So what is the whole mechanism? So there is consciousness from which the world comes, and world creates its own consciousness, and it gets added to the God itself. So God itself is expanding. So this is the Hindu understanding of reality. There is consciousness. But then what happened? As we came down the consciousness through the Yuga cycle, we all know about the Yuga cycles of Sati Yuga, then there was Treta Yuga, then there was Dwapar Yuga, and then there was Kali Yuga. So what was the meaning of that Yuga cycle? What was the meaning of the consciousness which kept decreasing? So as the consciousness kept decreasing, yugas came down. We call it the descending yuga cycle. In fact, there are two components of yuga cycle. First is the descending yuga cycle, which we experienced. That means we descended from Sati Yuga to Kali Yuga, and now we are in the ascending yuga cycle. So there is ascending Kali Yuga, and then there is currently we are in ascending Dwapar. So we went through the descending Kali Yuga, and our experience of consciousness kept reducing all the time. And at some point, the time came when we couldn't experience God. Even in Treta Yuga, the experience of God was somewhat available. In Dwapar Yuga, it was quite gone, but still sometimes it was available. But by the time the Kali Yuga began, there was almost no experience of consciousness. But we replaced belief with consciousness. When we couldn't experience God, we started to believe in it. We started to say, okay, it is written in Shastras, it is written in Vedas, in Upanishads. Krishna says this in Gita. That means God is there. But there was no experience we had. Humans were not experiencing it. Only very few people would experience God, and rest of them would believe it. So this is what I call the belief system, a religions of belief system. By the time Kali Yuga had come, every religion had become a belief system. It was no more experiential. It was the belief system. So even the Hindus, they started to believe in God. And even in West, the Jews, they also started to believe in God. So I wouldn't go into what Jews call God and what Hindus call God are very different actually. There is a lot of talk that the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims, they have a monotheistic God. That means a one God concept. And but actually, if you look deep, the Hindus' concept of one God is very, very different. So that I would leave for some other time. So I wouldn't go into that. But the direct experience of God was not available to humans. Only few people would experience it, and then they will share with the whole population, and people would believe that, yeah, okay, maybe there is God. So the real experience were replaced by rituals. And by the time Buddha had come, whole Hindu religion had become ritualistic. So there were Brahmins by birth. Okay. So in Vedas, the concept of Brahmin or caste system is not based on birth, but it has deteriorated to a birth concept, by birth. So there were Brahmins by birth. They would conduct the rituals and claim through that you would connect to God, and then God is listening to you. He would impart what you want. You want rain from God, He would give you. Or if you want liberation from the cycle of samsara, the God will give you. But nobody knew for sure. They were just a belief system. And since nobody knew, there was an all-round exploitation of the people that was happening by the class which would call themselves Brahmins. They would exploit the whole population because they claim to know of the secrets of how to connect to God, but actually they had no experience. What they knew in the name of secret was the text, the scriptures, what was written in the scriptures. They were following that. This is the context in which Buddhism came, when there was a lot of religious exploitation through rituals. And by the time Buddha had come, the experience of consciousness in the world had reduced. There was almost no experience of consciousness. So Buddha gave this, and what happened was, when experience of consciousness kept reducing, whatever life we were living would got stored in our subconscious, right? So the subconscious started to build up. Through the process, as we came down of the Yuga cycle, we came down the consciousness, we were no more experiencing the consciousness, but we were living our life in such a way that all the experiences, they were getting stored in our subconscious. So the subconscious became very strong. And that is what Buddha discovered, that the moving force of the world is no more God. The consciousness doesn't move the world. It is no more the God who moves the world, but it is the stored subconscious. Whatever is stored as emotions, what he called sanskaras, they are what move the world. The fragments of subconscious, collective subconscious. So this is what Buddha said, that it is not the God, but the sanskaras, who is the source of the world. And he said, look at the reality. This is the reality. And that is a reality we still face. We may believe in God, but actually, the experience we are having is of accumulated subconscious. As the consciousness became, subconscious became the moving force, we no more experience God. So Hinduism lost power, and that is why in Kali Yuga we saw the invasion by Islam. Then there was colonial rulers who came in, the English, the British. Because Hinduism was a religion which was based on the concept of God. And God could no more be experienced. So everything Hindus did was by connecting with God. They were always partnering with gods. And that partnering was no more available, though they believed that it was available, but it was no more available. So that is why we got enslaved. So what did Buddha say? Buddha said, okay, Buddha kept quiet in terms of whether there is God or not. But actually, if you see his whole doctrine, he is almost not talking about God. He said it is not important to talk about God. God is not important. So what is important is to dissolve the samskaras we have within our subconscious. So he gave the techniques to dissolve the sanskaras, and the most powerful technique, which many of you, I'm sure, must have experienced, is Vipassana. And what is the meaning of Vipassana? Vipassana means just watch. It is a technique of just watching. And what were you watching? And what do you watch in Vipassana? A lot of you have experienced Vipassana. We just observe our sanskaras there. And in the observation, the samskaras will dissolve. That is why you experience a lot of bliss, a lot of peace when you go through the process of Vipassana. So, do you see how different Hinduism and Buddhism are? They're almost opposite, in fact. And that is a beauty, that together they constitute a whole. While Hinduism is talking about the mechanism of God, Buddhism is talking about the mechanism of ego, the samskaras. And it is giving you technique to dissolve the sanskaras. And what we have in the name of Hinduism today mostly is a belief system, which is based on Vedic mantras. It says, you chant mantra, you will have an experience. But what is basically chanting of mantras? So it is like mantras is a system of affirmations. Affirmation is I believe something and then I experience that. So do you see today the Hinduism has become based on belief system. And that is why in today's India, if you see, we live by a lot of beliefs and not by a lot of reality. Buddhism, on the other hand, is talking about what is a reality. And it is almost denying the force of God. And that is why I say both of the religions bring very important principles. Hinduism says there is God, there is oneness, we all are interconnected. Okay, interconnected, Buddhism is also emphasizing. But it is not saying that there is a source from which all the intelligence descend. Okay, so Hinduism is saying that there is a cosmic vision, and Buddhism is saying that there is a force of samskaras. So both religions are totally opposite. And that is what the beauty is. Put them together, they constitute a great whole. The misfortune of India was that right in the nature of Buddhism, there was a confrontation with Hinduism. So when Buddha came, there was a lot of confrontation with Brahmins. And if there is one segment of society Buddha attacked, that was Brahmins. And he did attack a lot of Hindu concepts. So that confrontation began right then and there. And after a few centuries of Buddha had gone, Buddhism became very weak, and it started to kind of lose its influence. So one of the beauty of Buddha's religion was that it was a religion for the masses. While Brahmins, they had the religion of classes, of the few elites, which was the higher caste or the people with a lot of money. So Hinduism became the religion of mostly the higher caste people. But for Buddha, since he was anti-Brahmin, he attracted a lot of lower caste people. So probably 500 years after Buddha had gone, I would say roughly the Hindus and Buddhists, they were almost equal in India. After Buddha went, since Buddha did not give any moral code, Buddha said there is no need of moral. What you need is the real experience of who you are. And then you don't need the morals because you would behave appropriately in every situation. So moral code is not needed. So he almost gave no moral code. But as the more fierce Kali Yuga came, Buddhists, in the absence of moral code, kept becoming more and more immoral. And that is what Brahmins attacked Buddhism with. That it's an immoral religion, which was true to some extent. Now the Hinduism we live today, it was more or less given by Shankaracharya. And to re-establish Hinduism, he attacked Buddhism fiercely. He entered into a lot of intellectual debates and he defeated them. Sometimes, there used to be condition that whoever will lose the debate will immolate themselves, self-immolation. So there is a record of a lot of Buddhist followers immolating themselves, burning themselves. So once the Buddhist guide of a king would get defeated, he would start to follow the Shankara. So that is how the Hinduism got extinct from India. And by around 1200, almost there were no Buddhists in India. So the problem that happened, that Shankara, the consciousness was like that. It was either this or that, either Hinduism or Buddhism. So Shankara totally had to deny the Buddhism. It said Buddhism is all rubbish. But in calling Buddhism rubbish, he lost the key sutra of observation of samskaras. Unfortunately, none of the Hindu path has any technique to observe the samskaras, to observe the ego. That concept doesn't exist in India. So we are very bad in observing the reality. I will give you an evidence. A lot of people will contradict me, but I am going to give you an evidence. Almost none of the Buddhist countries were invaded by Islam. Very few of them. Why? Because they had very strong observation of reality. So they also knew what to do, how to counter Islam. None of the major Buddhist countries, except very few Buddhist countries, were ruled by colonial powers. If you see Japan, it was never ruled. China, Thailand. There were some Buddhist countries like Burma, which got ruled by British for some time. Sri Lanka was never ruled. So it was a Buddhist nations which almost remained free from any invasion. And what is the reason for that? There is one very simple reason. They knew how to observe the crisis. And in the observation itself, the resolution would come. Here I am going to say something very, very shocking. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question. Which nations are doing best in today's corona crisis? You are welcome to post your responses to this. Which nations are doing best in this corona crisis? Let me just go through the questions. Let me just read through and then I'll respond to them. So are there some responses? Okay, so there are some responses. Just 1 minute. Let me see what people are saying. Good. Thank you very much. There are a lot of responses and I would like to read some responses. Which nations are doing best today? Rashi says Thailand, Hemant says Africa. Mukul says South Korea. Dr. Kavita says Taiwan. Alok says Vietnam. Rashi says Japan to great extent. Manisha, South Korea. Suresh says Japan. Preeti says Thailand. Hemant says Madagascar. Is COVID free? Okay, but Madagascar is a very small country. So, okay. Daljinder says Israel. Mukul says China too. And Deepak says India compared to its population. Atin says South Korea. Dirga says Taiwan. Deepak says China, South Korea. Atin says, Preeti says China, also Germany. Okay, good. So let me offer insight here. It is the Buddhist nations which are doing best in dealing with the crisis. Taiwan dealt with, okay, when the crisis began, apart from China, the two nations which were most at risk because of their close connection with China, the two nations which had the biggest danger were South Korea and Taiwan. And if you see today, without going into any lockdowns, they could deal with the virus. Today, if you see, they are almost nowhere. So both nations are Buddhist, Taiwan and South Korea, and then Japan, almost very little of lockdowns. Yes, Thailand is doing very well. Again, a Buddhist nation, Vietnam, Cambodia. If you see the whole of the bloc where there is a Buddhism influence, they are doing very, very well in terms of dealing with this crisis. So why do Buddhists always deal with crisis very well? The reason is very simple. The crux of their cultures is the Sutra of Observation which Buddha gave them. And I always say that India lost its greatness. Sorry? Ha. So India lost its greatness when the Buddhism got separated from Hinduism. India will regain its greatness when Hinduism and Buddhism are integrated. So how do we look at that in our lives? I'll come to how to create a new vision in the post-corona world. Yeah, how do we apply the fundamentals of Hinduism and Buddhism towards discovering our vision? I'll come to that. Let me just go through the questions very quickly and let me respond to that. What is a trap of dualism according to Buddha? What does he say on oneness? So Buddha does talk about oneness, that there is oneness of world. All the beings of the world are integrated. They are related with one another. But he doesn't talk about God, which he says the final reality is zero, nothingness. And Hindu says that the final reality is the Brahma, the ever-expanding consciousness. So that is a difference. Preeti is asking a question. In today's time, how just remain abstain from all that is going on? So much violence is going on. So much violence is going on. And the trouble is when we want to deal the violence or anything else by way of the belief system, we will never be able to do that. What happens in a belief system, you keep moving from one extreme to another. You will never resolve. Yeah, so most important to deal with any violence is the Buddhist practice of observation. Look at a situation with totality and it will dissolve. That is the Buddha's insight. And we apply that insight a lot in our Quanto processes. I would like to say something about the Quanto life. Quanto life is an attempt. Okay, so it happened experientially. There was no intention of integrating all religions, but after all the Quantum Life practices had come, I realized that in Quantum Life, we have integrated the best practices of all the religions. So Quantum Life practices have a lot of integration of Hinduism as well as Buddhism. In Quantum Life practices, we not only dissolve the subconscious, we also connect with God. So it imbibes the fundamentals of both Hinduism and Buddhism. Mukul is asking question, in spite of contemporary nature of Buddha's teaching in Kali Yuga, why Buddhism suffered in India? As I said, there was always a conflict between Hindus and Buddhism, and when Buddhism became weak, Hindus struck them and it got extinct. Rashi is asking question, there are a flock of people who are doing chanting as Buddha passes, is it effective and advisable? As in quantum, we don't advise it. That is very interesting. Okay. So after Buddha went away, okay, so now Buddha's key insight was observation, and his whole religion began with opposition to chanting. But there were a lot of crises in Vipassana during Buddha's time, because in Vipassana, a lot of stored conditioning of yours will start to get released. And as Buddha taught Vipassana, people started to fall sick. They couldn't, because the consciousness was so low that the sanskaras, they were not releasing, and it was very painful physically. So Buddha almost had to withdraw that technique, and he replaced it by Lotus Sutra, the chanting on the heart. Now, there was a lot of difference between the Lotus Sutra chanting and Hindus chanting. Hindus Vedic chanting was basically trying to connect to third eye. Okay, the very high center. It was very, very difficult to connect to third eye during the period of low consciousness. So you would experience the vibrations of chanting for a moment. As soon as you stop chanting, that experience is gone. So people became split personalities. So what Buddha suggested, the heart is always called the seat of the subconscious, because the lower three chakras, they are the chakras of subconscious. The fourth chakra in heart, you start to come at the middle position, the lower three chakras of sansaras of the world and higher three chakras of the God. At the heart they meet. So Buddha started to teach concentration of heart through Lotus Sutra, through Heart Sutra. But his main practice was not that. He had to give this practice so that he could save people from the suffering, the pain of Vipassana. But now, as we come in ascending Dwapar Yuga, again Vipassana started all over the world. If you see, today there are a lot of schools which are teaching Vipassana. Because when today the sanskaras are released, there is enough consciousness to absorb them. So it is not such a painful experience. Of course, it is still a painful experience. And in quantum processes, we go much deeper than Vipassana into our sanskaras. We not only go into our individual subconscious, which Vipassana takes you, but also in the collective subconscious. So that is why the experience is much deeper. And through quantum processes, we also dissolve the collective subconscious. Okay, so Rashi's question, a lot of people who are doing chanting. Okay, so there was this monk in Japan, his name was Nichiren. And he declared the Heart Sutra, the Lotus Sutra, to be the peak, the crescendo of Buddhists. And he said, whatever has been said before is all nonsense. And I'm just telling you, do only one practice. And a lot of people, and that's how the chanting in Buddhism became very prevalent in Japan. In Japan, there are two equally powerful sects. One is based on Nichiren, and that is chanting based. Another is Zen, that is based on pure observation. And let me tell you the success of Japan. Japan emerged as an industrial powerhouse was because of Zen. Because Zen taught you to observe the world. And how Japan could excel, how it created a revolution in industries is by observation. By observation, it innovated, it cut costs, it improved quality of everything. So it was a Zen-based revolution. So it was a Zen, it was a practice of observation which took Japan to the peak. It was not the practice of chanting. So the chanting was a secondary process which Buddha had to recommend under compulsion. But chanting is not the crux of Buddhism. And chanting is not helping anyone, whether it is Buddhist chanting or whether it is Hindu chanting. So it is, when I'm talking about the essence of Buddhism, I'm talking about the observation. Leela is saying, in Buddhism, it is said that what causes suffering is attachment. So we try to achieve equanimity, don't feel trapped by emotions anymore. So some understand detached from your emotions. In Kwando, it is all about emotions. Yes, Buddha's called them sanskaras. And he said, Buddha had a lot of attention paid on past lives. He said you have to resolve past lives because your sanskaras have come from past lives. And all your emotions are coming from past lives. So yes, he said the detachment from emotions. Mansi says Buddhism started as a rebel religion to Hinduism. Yes, correct. Then Buddha was accepted as an avatar of Vishnu. Very good, yes. Have the teachings of Buddha been assimilated in Hinduism? Does Buddhism carry out Hinduism teaching? Okay, yes. So, declaring Buddha as avatar, ninth avatar of Vishnu, was mostly a strategy of Brahmins to win Buddhists back into the Hinduism. So they said that Buddha was the ninth avatar of Vishnu and they started to worship him. But there are very strange stories. If you Google on why is Buddha the ninth avatar, you will find the most strange stories. I have never, before I read all those stories, I could never believe that some avatar there could be some Vishnu avatar like that. So one of the stories, there are a lot of stories, but I'm just sharing one of the stories. So it says that because masses started to follow, listen to how strange this story is. Because of Hindu Dharma, since people were following all the Vedic rituals and concepts, so a lot of people started to go to heavens. Because they were so simple, anybody who would practice them would go to heaven. So the hell, the Narak, there was nobody was going there. It was vacant. So Yama, the lord of Narak, hell, he was very perturbed. What is my role now? I have nothing to do. Nobody is coming to hell anymore. So he goes to Vishnu and he pleads that Bhagwan, do something about it. Nobody is coming to Narak. Okay. So Vishnu says, okay, Tathastu, I will incarnate on earth and I will show them such a path which will take them to Narak straight. So your Narak will be full. Don't worry about it. Then he incarnated as Buddha. People started to follow the Buddha's teaching. Everybody is now going to Narak. So that is why Buddha is a avatar of Vishnu. Now tell me how strange is this story? In fact, you can Google. There are many strange stories about why Buddha is ninth avatar. None of them. I have never found even one story which is some kind of the positive story about Buddha from Hinduism. So, because Buddha was so popular, half of the Hindus, they were following Buddha. So it was a Brahmin's way of countering. So that they declared Buddha as the Vishnu avatar when there was all the effort to get all these Buddhists back into Hinduism. And when Buddhism started to lose hold, what happened was, because we had very strong caste system, okay, So there was a lot of wondering about which caste these Buddhists will form in Hinduism. Of course, they cannot be Brahmins, they cannot be the three upper caste. So they have to be Shudras. Even Shudra says, no, 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 we don't want Buddhists. Because they are completely corrupt people. So there was a fifth caste that was introduced. It was called the untouchables. So Hindus don't have 4 castes, they have 5 castes actually. And Baba Sahib Ambedkar used to say that those who are untouchables today, they used to be Buddhist at some point of time. And it is those untouchables, those ex-Buddhists, they got converted into Islam. And that's how Hinduism became weak. Because they were never welcomed back by Hindus. So they converted to Islam. That is why you will see that wherever Buddhism was very strong, that's where Islam got almost all of its conversions. For example, in Bengal, Buddhism was very strong. And it became primarily Muslim. You see the whole of the Bangladesh is created out of that. Even in West Bengal, there are so many Muslims. If you see, Afghanistan was totally Buddhist. It got totally converted into Islam. The Pakistan, and a lot of parts in the whole of the Kashmir was Buddhist. So the reason we gave the soft spot to Islam to entry is because of we could not assimilate Buddhists back with respect. So this is about the why Buddha is okay. So Hindus called Buddha as a 9th incarnation, but they never incorporated the teachings of Buddha because it was supposed to take you to hell. What advice, Mansi is asking, what advice would Buddha give today on how to live this pandemic? Some of the advice you will see how a lot of Buddhist countries have reacted to pandemic. And just by pure observation, they have found very simple ways. They did not have to resort to lockdowns and all. Jasveer is asking, I'm new to this group. How can we get connected with Shivo? You are already connected with me. And if you want to get connected with the Quantum Life practices, you are most welcome. We will shortly have a session on introduction to Quantum Life. Yeah. Nitika is asking, can we say that each individual decides a life based on experiences he or she wants to go through? Can we say that each individual decides a life based on experiences? Our life, okay. Our life is based on the experiences we go through as well as the beliefs we have. Sometimes we don't have the experience, we have the beliefs, and we keep living our beliefs. And I call that is the most ineffective way of living is by living in your beliefs. You have to live in reality, not in belief. Did the concept of observation never exist in Hinduism? Did the concept of observation never exist in Hinduism? It existed. Through observation, all the Upanishads have come. But our observation was of God. We did not observe the subconscious. So Hinduism is a wonderful way of merging in superconscious. But it is very poor in observation of subconscious. Swati has asked the question, what is the best way to face and accept the chaos in current situation? Handle the negativity. Okay, so how to handle the negativity? A lot of people say, be positive. That's a very false way of living. Your whole of the energy is just going in fighting with negativity and being positive. Sorry, you will lose all your creativity if you are trying to be positive. And it will collapse anyways because that belief itself, because you, by being positive, you want to believe in something and that is going to collapse. It's not going to work. So instead of being positive, be in observation. In observation, the negativity will dissolve. Not only it will dissolve, you will also get connected with God and you will receive the guidance. So better to be in observation rather than being in positivity. And this is what we call synthesis. It is different from meditation. So I invite Swati to experience synthesis. Renuka is asking question with existing sanskaras, how is integration possible? Okay, so all sanskaras, they are nothing but the shadows of consciousness. And as you throw light on them, they will merge into God. So only thing needed to integrate our sanskaras, to integrate our subconscious into conscious, to acquire the energy of subconscious. A lot of people say to acquire the energy of subconscious, what you do is you do all those affirmations and visualizations, and you control subconscious, all rubbish and stupid. These are all very asuric ways, because subconscious is not a positive force. It's a lot of negativity stored in you. So you don't need to control it. By controlling, people become split personalities. Don't control subconscious. Observe it. Be the master. Right? There's a very simple example of observation. So there are a lot of people are working on assembly line, and the proper work is not happening. Okay. People are just having fun, and somebody is doing something, and productivity is very low. So then what is observation? Boss comes in, start to look at everyone. He doesn't do anything, just looks at everyone. What happens after that? Everything falls into order. Simple. That is observation. Okay. So when you start to observe all these chaotic forces within you, they just get aligned with you. They become your strength. They are no more your weakness. Venkatesh is asking, when people are, I want to know about being angry. People are irritating continuously. What to do? Observe. Quantum Life gives you practices not just to observe your own subconscious, but also the subconscious of others. And it transforms not just you, but others also. Dirga asked why Buddhist countries dealt it better. I already asked, responded. Dirga. India was already rich in heritage long before Buddhism. Buddhism came into existence after Buddha. Yes, India was very rich in heritage, and that is what is our trouble today. Anita has asked this question. Our trouble is that we were rich in heritage. That is the biggest problem we face today. Why? Because we are always going to our past glory. Have you seen the people whose forefathers were rich? They were kings, but they don't even have food to eat. But they are always living by that glory. And let me tell you, in the ascending Dwapara Yuga, which nations have done best? The nations which are able to let go of the glory of the past. The first nation which became great was Britain. And what it did was it dropped its past, simply dropped its past. That's how Britain became great. So we have to respect our heritage, but we have to understand, we have to create new. And unfortunately, I keep listening a lot of discussions. Like a few months back, I read, there were a lot in newspaper that we used to have 24 Pushpak Vimanas, and Hinduism was so great. And I don't doubt it. Maybe we had Pushpak Vimanas. But do we have them today? No. Today we have the Vimanas created by Boeing, right? There are various aircraft companies which are creating them. So why are we feeling proud of the Pushpak Vimanas? And because we feel proud of the Pushpak Vimanas, we cannot never create good Vimanas today. So we have to let go of this attachment with the glory. Today we travel in the airplanes which are made by the companies. We don't travel in Pushpak Vimanas. I would have appreciated if you said that, okay, we had Pushpak Vimanas, now we will recreate that again. We will recreate Pushpak Vimanas. I would appreciate that. So our focus has to go on new creation. We Hindus are getting stuck with our glorious past too much. And that is why, we are not doing very well. Anita has asked me a question. Do you mind providing a simple reference from primary sources? Any of the following you have spoken about today? Shrutis and Smriti, break your claims. I'm saying whatever I'm saying is based on, a part of that is based on Shrutis and Smritis. And your claims about H Samaj. What is that? What is Hindu Samaj? Yeah, of course I'm saying, I'm referring to Upanishads, I'm referring to Vedas. Conflict between Brahmins and Buddhism. Of course, you can read through. She's asking about the conflict between Brahmins and Buddhists. Of course, you can read through Shankara's whole debates with a lot of Hindu scholars. Why no mention of Afghanistan? I already mentioned Afghanistan. Yeah, that why they became an Islamic country. This question was from Shilpa. Almost and all countries have opted for lockdown, except Anil is saying almost all countries have opted for lockdown, but Taiwan, South Korea have emerged from it. They have controlled it without lockdown. So, okay, let's not look for excuses. Let's look for the best examples. Okay, if you want to learn something in your life, Anil, you have to look at the best. So there are countries which have dealt without lockdowns. Okay, even if they are very few, but we need to look up to them. In Bhagavad Gita, either only up to Avatar Kalki is indicated, how that would appear in the end of Kali Yuga. Okay, so Vishnu has asked this question. Vishnu Chetna has asked this question. Okay, so Kalki Avatar question I will skip because it is very controversial, but I am dealing with in my book. So you can read my book and find out about the Kalki Avatar. Hemant is asking, do past life karma add up to subconscious? Yes, Hemant. This is what I spoke. I want explanation on oneness, connectedness. What is, did not believe in God? Okay, so Jyoti, he said that all the beings of this cosmos are interrelated. Okay, but he says it's the collective whole, it's not God. So he denied God as a source of the world, but he did not deny the oneness. What is subconscious? Anita is asking, I already explained. Subconscious is the collection of all the moments from past lives, which we did not live fully. There is a cycle of 100 years of this terrible experience of cleaning. In one way, we can say how to deal with this cycle of cleaning. And there is a cycle of 50 years. I will deal with that some other time. Please give exact references, not vague statements. Shilpa, you are welcome to connect on the WhatsApp. Right now, I cannot give exact references. Okay, I will tell me what references you want, I'll give you. Navneet, I am not clear on the following part. In quantum view to observation the process, how does Buddhist practice observation? How countries like Viva? Okay, so now Navneet has asked a very beautiful question. How countries like Taiwan and Japan are observing? And so she wants to understand what is the observation. So yes, Shilpa, also I am writing all these references. I am writing a book where I am giving all the references from everywhere, so many sources. Everything I'm saying is based on some reference. I'm not making up anything. My book is full of quotes and references and sutras and everything. So Navneet has asked a very beautiful question. How does Buddhist practice or observation, how countries like Japan and Taiwan is observing? You know what I feel, what we missed in this crisis in India is because of our belief system. Now we are coming to the last part of this talk, is how to create our own vision. So I will answer Navneet's question, but before that I will, okay, so I will not be taking any questions anymore. Maybe if you still have a question, you can quickly send me, but after that, after another 3 minutes, we will not take any question. Okay, so if you want to create vision for post-corona world, there are 3 very important components. Okay. Observe your subconscious. Resolve it. First component. That will make your energy unstuck. It will create a new wisdom in you. Whatever you are struggling with, whatever is sucking your energy, you will simply become free. Your stuckness, your conflicts will turn into wisdom. So observe your subconscious is the first sutra. Second sutra, partner with gods. Today environment is very chaotic. We cannot start to live, create a vision by ourselves. We have to connect with gods like we did in Vedic times. Connect with them, seek their guidance. But you cannot connect with gods today by way of Vedic mantras. You will connect with them for a moment and you will fall back. And it turns you into a split personality. It has its own dangers. I will not talk about it. But how to connect with gods is by understanding their essence, by observing the subconscious, which is like the shadow of that God. For example, if you are invoking Hanumanji, let's say, so he's the epitome of power and humility. And the subconscious force we have within us is the fear and arrogance. Okay, so this is entry to Hanuman. Hanuman cannot enter you even if he wants to. So observe your fear, observe your arrogance, and it's very easy to connect with Hanumanji. A lot of quantos will tell you how easy it is to connect with gods. So this is the second sutra. Let the vision come to you in partnership with gods. That is the second sutra. Third sutra is about intensity. Okay. It is a time to relive what Krishna said in Gita. And he said something very, very beautiful. We forgot that. In fact, that is very, very important reason why India fell. And unless we address that, we cannot become a Vishwaguru. And let me tell you what he said. He said, do your karma without attachment to fruits. When you are not attached with fruits, you are connecting with God. You are the instrument of God. So when you are acting, it is the wish of God. So you see how beautifully he connected bhakti with action. In India, we have connected bhakti with inaction. Bhakti means believe in God, don't do anything. There is no point. Just do the bhakti. Like, one of the, there was this great saint, Maluka Das, and he gave this sutra, Ajgar kare na chakri, panchi kare na kam, Das Maluka kahe gaye, sabke data ram. Means the python doesn't work, the birds don't work. So if God is giving me, why should I work? That became our sutra of bhakti. But Krishna had given a very different sutra of bhakti. He said, let your expectations go, but be in total action. Be the channel of God. And that's what is bhakti. So we need to be in intense action. And in Quantum Life, we have devised a very beautiful understanding out of this sutra. And that is the living of value creation life. Whether what you are acting, whether it enhances the three Deva qualities. So there are the three sutras: dissolve your subconscious, connect with gods, partner with gods, and the third sutra is be in intense action all the time in your life. There are the three sutras of creating new vision. Maybe we will deal with these at some other point of time. Specifically, we can have a talk on this. Let me just read through if there is any more questions, and then we will get into the invocations. Yes, Mansi. Yes.
We have one more question by Dhara, and she's asking specifically about synthesis.
Yeah.
And she's saying that when she does synthesis, she has only one type of imprint, which is strong pulls in her neck and face.
Yes.
So is there some significance to that? And she never has any other imprint.
Right. So Dhara, this is the main imprint you have. and it is right now overpowering you. And since it is in your neck and face, it may have something to do with expression, self-expression. It is probably your self-expression is blocked. But once this is dissolved, you will see there are many more imprints. Yes, is there any more questions? Let me just, yeah.
I don't see any questions, but I would like to take this opportunity to share about our introductory sessions and also the FFS support group, the support coaching. So Shivo, do you want to
Yeah.
talk about that, or?
Yeah, Mansi, you can explain that. By the way, Mansi, please also
Yes.
go through all the comments that have come, and if there is anything which I need to respond, just let me know. And please explain what you are saying here.
Yeah, sure. So we are going through most of the comments. We're going through all the comments and sharing it with Shivo. But in case we have missed anything, it is not our intention. Please write to us again. It's not our intention, but just we have so many messages coming on our private chat also, and also in the group. We might have missed. And if we have missed, please let us know. It is not our intention. So what I want to share is we do have an introduction to Quanto Life coming up, and you're all welcome to it. We will be sharing some of the history, but also most importantly, we'll be sharing our base process, which is freedom from sadness. We'll be sharing exactly how to do it. It will be an interactive session where people will get to share how exactly they are doing it. We will be having people share some miracle stories on how they did FFS and got results and breakthroughs. So you're all welcome to it. Please join our guest group, because that's where we post all the information. And Atin is going to put in the link. In case you're not in the guest group, please join that. And another thing we have is FFS private coaching. So if you feel you have a specific problem and you need personal coaching, please contact Nitika. I'll have Nitika say hi, or you can write to her on our guest group. So we do offer at a very, very nominal price, we offer FFS and synthesis coaching. And so yeah, you are welcome to avail of any of these methods.
Okay, Mansi, thank you very much. And before I come to today's invocation process, okay, because we are going to invoke Buddha today, what offering he wants, he basically wants your belief system to be dissolved. So I would invite everyone to look into one belief, okay, and we need to let it go. And before we get into the invocation process, I was discussing about India and how India could have done better, or why Buddhist countries are doing better. One of the mistakes we have made in India is we have believed in that India, okay, so initially the understanding was that India was a Vishwaguru. It is correct. It is not a belief. It is the truth, the reality. But we extrapolated that in saying that we will become a Vishwaguru. And then some people started to believe that India already is a Vishwaguru. So we started to feel some kind of a superiority. Okay. So the problem which, okay, now this pandemic is a very big demonstration of how the belief system failed. Once you start to believe that India is a superior country, you are not looking at others, you are not learning from anyone. Before this crisis spread in India, Korea and Taiwan, they had already dealt with it much more successfully. And if we did not have this notion of superiority, we could have learned from these nations. And today I can promise you, we would have been doing much better than what we are doing today. So Hinduism was never about feeling superior to someone. Hinduism was always about including everybody's intelligence, everyone's understanding. And that is why Hindus is the only religion in the world which has survived for at least 12,000 years. There were religions in Greece, there were religions in Persia, there were religions in Egypt. Okay, Egyptian religion was very great. It could not survive. Okay, just because of one reason. We included good things from everywhere. And I think the biggest mistake we have done, we have committed today, that we did not learn from others. We lived in a false notion of superiority. And if you live in the notion of superiority, it is going to collapse. The people who learn from others, they are the people who do great in life. So if India wants to fulfill its potential of being the Vishwaguru, it has to become open to learn from everywhere. Same way, if we want a life of success, we need to open ourselves to learn from everywhere. Okay, it's a very clear-cut wisdom. So we will now have a very short invocation process. And as a lot of you who are already into Quanto practices know that in Quanto life, it's actually very easy to invoke gods or goddesses. It's very easy to connect with anyone. So today we are going to connect with the consciousness of Buddha. It's going to be a very simple process. Just give me a minute. Okay, so I invite everyone to message what is a belief system you want to observe. Okay, so I invite every one of you to pick up a belief system, something very strong you believe in. And we will observe today, we will let it go. And as it dissolves, you will see a whole new wisdom dawning upon you. So we are going to move from belief to wisdom. Okay, so please keep sending what is a belief system you are going to observe or you are going to offer to Buddha today. Masi, can you please, anyone sending their offering of belief, can you just keep sending on my WhatsApp?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so we will just sit down. Okay, the pose I very much like. I would say it's a Quanto pose. It's not Sukhasana, it's not Padmasana. I will show you. This is a pose. Keep feet open here. Keep the feet open here. Okay. So I think it's called Ardha Sukhasana. I think it's called Ardha Sukhasana in typical yoga language. This is the pose I like best. In Quanto, the difference between Quanto synthesis and others meditation. In other meditations, we are going within. We are tapping our within. In Quanto, we are tapping within and outside both. So we need to remain open to the whole cosmos. So keep your both feet open. Okay, keep one leg over another. And what is a mudra I very much like? Just keep your hands open like this. No need of any Gyan mudra. They may be valuable, but for connecting with cosmos, this is the mudra. Just keep it open and keep it over your legs. Keep it over your feet. Okay. So a lot of you are Quantos. They already know what is psychic imprints. But those who don't know, as you offer your belief system, I will ask you to observe your body head to toe, and you will find your belief somewhere in your body. It could be in your head. Mostly you'll find it in your head or in your neck or in your heart. Okay. it would be having some kind of a form. Either it will feel heavy, it will feel burning, or it will feel like pricks. Some form it will have. Okay, and so what we are going to do is we will first invoke the quantum field. We will scan our body head to toe. Then we will invoke Buddha and we will request him to guide us. Then we'll feel our belief system within our body, and then we'll go into Shavasana. Okay, so this is the process we will follow. Swati says her belief is in destiny. Yes, you need to let it go. Yeah, it's a blocking belief. There is a certain truth in destiny, but there are other truths also. So we need to open ourselves. What happens in belief, what you do is you start to believe in something and then you reject the next thing, other thing. But we need to include everything. So your belief might be true, but even the opposite of that is true. Okay, so I think I have a list of a lot of beliefs. Let me just read out. Nitika says, find it difficult to get out of my comfort. So stuckness with your comfort. Comfort is the highest state of living. This is the belief, Nitika. Okay. Mansi says, believe in whatever, support and understand is right. I want to work on becoming more open to receiving. Okay, so Kavita, belief is that I am close to receiving. But I think you are very open. I know you. Okay, but Kavita, look at something which is a block. I want to work on becoming more open is not a belief system. This is a wisdom, but look at your belief system. Okay, now Preeti says, why change is so painful? Belief in destiny. Whatever support, understanding is right. Okay, my belief, Gaurav's Galaxy J7. My belief is chanting Om and Hanuman Chalisa. Fine, you can chant Om and Hanuman Chalisa, but understand there is a truth which is much beyond that. This is not the only truth. I love Hanumanji, but there are more effective ways of connecting with him, and that is by offering the shadows which is hiding within you. So you can continue Hanuman Chalisa, but drop the belief in that. From Dhara, offer my self-limiting belief that I'm inferior. Yes, Dhara, drop it. This is what your throat, the block in your throat is, that I'm inferior, not worthy of any success. Rohini says, my belief is law of karma. Law of karma is true, but don't believe in that, because there is a truth beyond that also. Law of karma is not the highest. Okay. In fact, this is something I love about Christianity, about Jesus. He says it's not that you have to pay for your sins. You can simply repent. So don't believe in law of karma. Even the repentance has a lot of power. When you repent for your karma, it dissolves, because the God is compassionate. He wants you to learn. He is not a judge who is out there to punish you. Okay. So law of karma is true, but don't believe in that. There is a truth which is beyond law of karma also. So drop the belief in law of karma. Rather have the wisdom of law of karma. Shambhavi says, I can't do it myself. I need a partner. Okay, there's a certain truth in that, but don't believe in that. So each of your belief has a certain truth in that. I'm not denying it. But don't look at it like a belief, like the final truth. It's not the final truth. There's a truth beyond it also. That's why I'm saying, offer your belief. There is a wisdom hidden in your belief. We want the wisdom, but we want resistance to something else, which has developed because of our belief system. Fear of failure, says Anita. Daljinder says, if I am good, all good will happen to me. Not necessary. Drop this belief, Daljinder. My experience is moment, some good is done to someone, situation goes negative, person goes negative. Drop this belief, Rashi, very limiting. Preeti says fear of being left alone. Drop this belief that if you are alone, there's some trouble will happen. Best of the things happen when you are alone. Anil says, my belief, never be proactive and plan for tomorrow. Fine, drop. We need to be in initiative. Yeah, that's another wisdom. Jyoti to everyone, lovers of God cannot lie and should do what they preach. Even Krishna lied, so don't think lovers of God cannot lie. Drop that belief also. And I'm not saying those who are lying are godly people. No, I'm not saying that. But even the most divine people can lie. Fear of future and unknown. Okay, drop that fear, Anita. Daljinder says, what is meant for me will come to be no matter what. You are saying same thing like Das Maluka. अजगर करे ना चाकरी पंछी करे ना काम दास मलुका कहे गए सबके दाता राम. You don't believe in that sutra. Belief for change is always painful. Mansi says, I did not do some important creative work because I felt blocked in reading. Okay, so there is block in reading. Okay, so there are a lot of things. A lot of offerings. Thank you very much. We are offering all this in quantum field. And you will feel a lot of freedom from this. Belief in fate, says Manmeet. Drop this belief in fate. Fate, destiny may be true, but there is a truth beyond that also. Both are true. Destiny happens to you and you create your destiny. Both are true. Okay, so Ranjana has a belief ignoring my shortcomings and focusing on a plus point. So a lot of people have believed that I'll focus on my plus point, ignore my shortcomings. Drop this belief. Focus on your plus points, but also observe your negative points. It says, I believe it takes a lot of effort to succeed in life. Maybe true sometimes. Sometimes people succeed effortlessly. Pando, we try to find a way where we succeed effortlessly. Hemant says, my belief in equality to every human being, irrespective of their religious path. Okay, relief sounds good, but it can turn into something like communism. So not everybody is same, everybody is unique. That is another part of story. So drop this belief, Hemant. All humans are equal. No, they may be equal, but they are different. Kavita says, I'm confused, sometimes powerful, sometimes low. Okay, so drop this, Kavita. All I have to do is good, everything will be fine, says Jeet. Not necessary, you may do good and the results may be bad sometimes. Drop this belief. We need to keep identifying all our beliefs, keep dropping each of them. Raghu says, my belief is continuous action. Just a minute. For results, well, sometimes you have to be in inaction. That's when you receive the wisdom. If you're always in action, God will never talk to you. So drop that belief that you have to be in continuously in action. Action and pause, both are important. Shilpa says, everyone really said disturbing see, dharmics, forsaking several million knowledge. I'm not forsaking any knowledge. I'm saying we need to create new. Don't get stuck with your old knowledge. Don't get stuck with the old glory. Rather go beyond your old glory. Create something new. The nations which are creating something new are the great nations. Don't become like the Nawabs. Belief in Nazar Lagna, Navneet, it may be true, but evil eye, drop that belief. Okay, because you are beyond that. If you have a strong aura, no evil eye can affect you. So discover that. Belief in life, Dirga, well, life and death, polarities. Alok says, my belief is to feel that I am right. Difficult to work with the team. You need to drop, Alok. Make a post of your interaction from Naveen Govar. Belief. Okay. Okay. Now I think. Okay. So I'm going to stop taking. Thank you very much for. Let me just read out for you. Belief in self. Sureka says, Sureka, sometimes you need to doubt in self also. Believe in yourself, but also doubt yourself. Otherwise, you will commit mistakes which are very big. Everyone, my negative opinion about me is a reason for scarcity. Well, your negative opinion about you is a reason for scarcity may not be true. Go beyond it. There could be a wisdom beyond it. Being not only doing from Lata Kumar, I believe I need to be right